Hi guys, it's Rushmina and welcome back to the Peppy podcast. Welcome, welcome. Today we have with us a special guest. Her name's Nadège Saysana and she's a life coach from France. Hi Nadège.
Hello, thank you so much for having me on your podcast, Rushmina.
Thank you so much for being here. We're so excited. And can you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Sure. So, as you said, yes, I'm a life coach, and I became a life coach actually because I struggled myself with overeating for 30 years of my life. So that's why now, today, I help women who lift stop binge eating. Finally, because it was my struggle for the longest time. That was the thing that was always on my mind, and I was miserable. So once I found the thing, which is basically what was happening for me in my head, what I was thinking. Once I found the solution, I thought, well, it would be selfish to keep it to myself. It would be unethical. So that's why I became a life coach. That's why I now help women do the same, stop the noise in their head, the overthinking about food 24/7, and feel so much better, in their body, but also have a much better life.
And much better control
Yes,
food. Okay.
absolutely.
Okay, so can you tell me a little bit about how this journey began and how you started to overeat?
Yes, absolutely. So I think like lots of teenagers, I started when I was about 15, 16. I started looking at my body and noticing what the parts that I didn't like. And because lots of people were going on diets to fix the things that we didn't like about our bodies, I did the same. And I got a lot of compliments. But then I noticed I got scared because I was losing weight and it felt a bit out of control. And so I stopped, but then I started doing the other thing, which was overeating. And then when I didn't like the impact of the overeating on my body, I started restricting again. And it started this yo-yo dieting that so many people know, and it lasted for 30 years, but it got worse and worse because the more I was restricting, the more I wanted to overeat. So
Mm.
typically, one day would be like during the day, I would, limit my food, thinking I was good, focusing on the foods that were healthier or known as healthier, and at the end of the day, I couldn't take it anymore, and I would rebel against myself all day long. I was just, I want to eat this, but I shouldn't, I mustn't, I can't. And at the end of the day, it was just, I want to eat this and I will. And I was rebelling against my own rules. And it felt really uncomfortable. I felt really uneasy with myself. It was just as if there were two people within me, which was crazy. It's just like the one who was really focused on doing well, being healthy, and the other one who just simply was like a toddler in a candy shop and just like, give me everything I want right now. And so I didn't like that. I didn't like that at all. And so that's why I kept looking for a solution. I thought, first of all, like so many people, that I needed to change the food. That's why during the day I was so focused on the food. And it's true, we know that some foods are better for your body overall in the long run. Um, but I've since learned that there's no bad food. As as soon as you label a food as bad, it becomes the forbidden fruit. The one thing that, of course, you will want so much. But when you allow yourself to have all the foods, then this extreme desire, this extreme urge or craving for this particular food that you put on a pedestal, it decreases. If you can have as many donuts as you want, if you can have as many fries as you want, of course, there's a little bit of guilt
Mm.
that's going to probably show up at the beginning,
Mm.
but then it loses its appeal. It's just like, yeah, I can have fries for breakfast, lunch, dinner, each snack. What's the point?
Mm. And when you talk about these foods that you put on a pedestal, would you say that you had some foods that you crave more than others, like chocolate or chips or cake or
Yes, all those.
all of those?
All of those, yes. And they're so common. Yes. And also, they're often what we call comfort food.
Yeah.
And I realize now that indeed what I was looking for in the chips, in the jam, in the Nutella, in the peanut butter, that was the comfort. At the end of the day, after resisting, being so hard on myself all day long, I craved comfort. And so I turned to those foods that are so palatable, so full of chemicals too, that are meant to trigger those cravings. And I was looking for comfort. I since learned that food is here to solve hunger, to make your stomach full, but it can't solve your emotion. It can only solve that sensation that is hunger, but it can't solve emotions. So I was craving for comfort, but food can't make me feel comforted. If I'm sad, they can't make me feel happy or reassured or relieved or whatever. If I'm feeling stressed, they can't lower the stress, not at all. Quite the opposite, actually, because after eating what I knew I didn't want or I didn't need, I felt bad about myself. So I was beating myself up. So instead of lowering the stress, I was actually adding more stress to this.
Mm.
So yeah, I since learned that I was turning to those foods, but for the wrong reasons, not because I was about to save them, like a gastronome, but just because I wanted to forget how I was feeling.
And can I ask, when did food start to become a coping mechanism for you?
Right. Well, I think it's. Did you mean start or stop?
Start.
Yes. So it started when I was, yeah, 16, I guess,
Okay.
because I guess it's so easily accessible. And probably at that time I started to have my pocket money and so
Mm.
started, going to grocery store on my own. And
Mm.
so that was the thing that was available, that
Mm.
was easy to get. Um, and it was also kind of okay to eat,
Yeah.
contrary to smoking, things like that. Yeah,
Smoking, drinking, even gambling, things
right.
like that. Yeah. I think things like food, shopping, they're not as taboo as things like the other ones I've mentioned. So
Yeah.
a lot of people slip into these coping mechanisms a lot more easily.
Mm-mm,
Even I think work, some people use work as a coping mechanism, but then
totally.
when you're working a lot, it's not seen as a bad thing. It's seen as, oh my God, they're really ambitious.
Totally.
Yeah.
I agree. I so agree. Even cleaning, I had a client who couldn't stop, putting the cushion this way and doing the laundry and so on.
Mm.
And it was also a form of buffering against, a
Mm.
form of numbing our own feelings.
Mm.
So it's totally okay for society to have a clean house. But when it becomes like Monica in France, like it's a coping mechanism, we may question that. But it's often, yes, seen as a good thing. And even for food, it's often encouraged. It's part of celebration. We're in a
Mm.
celebratory season right now, and it's part of it, and it's okay, and it's encouraged. But it's the way we do it, then that can be the problem. If we're doing it against ourselves, not because we really like the food and we really want to connect with the people, but if it's just to fill yourself up,
Mm.
that's a very different way to
Yeah.
approach it.
Or to
Mm.
fill a void.
Yeah, totally. Yes.
Yeah. And can I ask, when did you start to think, okay, this is becoming a problem for me?
Yes, absolutely. So it started when my daughter was born. So to tell you the backstory, it took us 8 years to have two kids,
Mm-hmm.
and I was really stressed, anxious, really wondering what was wrong with us, and with me in particular for it taking so long. And so I thought during that time that if I could have a second child, then of course I would be tremendously happy, all my problems would be solved, etc. But then when my daughter was born, I was overjoyed, and still, little by little, I realized that yeah, wait, I'm still binge eating. So it means that I'm not happy, something else is playing there. What is it? And so that's when I realized that it was not just the food, it was not just the perfect family, it was not just having the right job that's fulfilling and so on. There must have been something deeper on. It was not also, it had nothing to do with the right diet, eating the right way, or things like that, working out. No, I was doing those things. And yet in the evening, I was still opening the fridge, opening the cupboard, putting my hand in the candy jar, things like that. So that's when I realized, okay, there's something else going on. Um, and it's been going on for 30 years. Now is the time to really look look into it and find a solution that works.
Mm-hmm. And how did that journey sort of move on from there? What happened next?
Yes. So I because she was such a baby. I wanted to be with her, but at the same time, I wanted my brain to be stimulated, and I was looking for the solution. So that's when I turned to podcasts. So it was 14 years ago, but that's when I love podcasts so much because they helped me so much. And the first podcast I found was the one by Renée Stevens. It's no longer out there, I'm afraid, but she wrote a book which is called Fulfilled. And, she taught me, the podcast was called Inside Out Weight Loss. And she taught me actually that it was not about the food, it was not about the diet, it was really about what was going on inside of me, and typically how I was talking to myself. She taught me how to be kind to myself, which was really unheard of because I was so judgmental towards myself. And not only just towards myself, towards everyone, because I thought that was the right way to deal with anyone in life, me including. Just you have to judge them, so that they know what's wrong.
Mm,
And so I was judging myself all the time. I was hypercritical towards myself.
mm,
And Brené Stevens taught me that no, being kind actually was a much better way to deal with whatever I was feeling,
mm,
whatever I was experiencing. And it was the solution, actually. So she was the one to teach me that. And then when I had listened to all the podcasts and learned so much from her, I looked for another podcast. And that's when I found the Life Coach School podcast by Brooke Castillo.
mhm,
And that's what also changed my life again, going a deeper level. Because she taught me that if I was feeling miserable at the end of the day, it was not because of the day I had. It was not because of what the people had said. It was not about what the weather or things like that. It was because of the emotions I was creating for myself, the stress, the boredom, the anger, the frustration. I was creating that for myself. And those feelings were not random, they were coming from what I was thinking about my life, about me, about the people around me, and so on. So that's when I realized that if I was the one creating those emotions that I wanted to run away from at night with ice cream, bread, whatever, then I had the power to change the way I was seeing my life. And when I changed that, it's still a work, an ongoing work, of course. But when I started changing the way I was talking to myself, I started changing the way I was feeling. And that changed the coping mechanism because then I no longer wanted to numb my feelings, cope with whatever I was feeling with food.
mm. And then how did you start to act differently when you felt those hunger pangs and those cravings? What changed?
Yes, okay. And that's also when I learned how to differentiate the hunger pangs from the emotional hunger, the
Mm,
craving. Because I realized, but I was so disconnected from my body that it took me a while. It was relearning to connect with my body. I realized that yes, hunger pangs that happens in my stomach, in my body, and I'm starting to feeling a bit weak, and I can hear my stomach grumble. Well, people can hear it too. And when actually I've had dinner and I know my body is full,
mm,
my stomach is full, and I crave chocolate, that's not hunger.
mm,
That's a craving. That's emotional eating. So I learned how to separate those two. And once I could do that, then I could decide, okay, what am I going to do? If I'm hungry, it's totally normal to eat. I'm not going to stop that. I can choose what I'm going to eat. I can choose to eat almonds. I can choose to eat, fruits that are good for me, that I know that I feel better with it. Um, but if it's emotional eating, then I can choose to have something or to delay a little bit. And I started delaying, just noticing, okay, can I survive? Even though I really, really think that I want this chocolate square, but can I survive if I just delay it by 1 second? And
mm,
I could see that, oh, you wait, I can live for 1 second more
mm,
without having that chocolate. So can I delay it a bit more and see, challenging myself like this, not with big hard thing like, no, you're not going to have sugar for 30 days in a row,
mm,
which is what I used to do, but of course it felt impossible. But starting small, that started to build trust with myself, the trust that I'd completely lost with this, going back and forth motion with restricting all day and then rebelling against myself all night. That's how I rebuilt this trust with myself.
mhm,
And that's how I started also delaying more and more that instant gratification that I was looking for in the food.
Mhm. Mhm. And when you started to sort of replace these foods or delay your cravings, did you feel like replacing the food item with something else, did that satisfy those cravings?
Right. Yes. So I had to talk a lot with myself because I was so focused on the food as the only thing that I could get pleasure from, that I had to look for other ways. And that's what I should actually do with my clients today. Is we create a pleasure plan so that at the end of the day, when they're so used to looking for the cake or the chips at the end of the day as the reward, the only reward they're looking for, we start, you know, looking at other ways to create that pleasure for themselves, ways that they forgot
Mm.
actually. And typically, what we hear, when we stress and so on, we typically hear, "Well, go for a walk, have a bath." But when you're experiencing stress and during the day, and you're so used to coping with stress with food, having a bath when you're in the middle, about to go in a meeting, or having a walk when you're in an audition, that's not realistic. So that didn't help. But finding other ways to find pleasure, like listening to your favorite song, maybe dancing for 3 minutes, maybe remembering words that were taught to you by someone you really care about. Things like that, they bring a form of pleasure, a form of reassurance or relief, and then it means that you don't have to turn to the food, which doesn't mean that you'll never turn to food ever again, but it can be a complementary way to, you know, find pleasure, comfort in your life. And also, if because my brain was um, so focused on the food that it felt hard when I was wanting to maybe read a book instead, or read just a paragraph instead of turning to the food. It really was so intent on the food that I also learned how to actually have the food, but in a very different way from the one I used to do. Because what I used to do was to just eat very fast and not really paying attention to what I was eating until that, oops, it's gone. It's just, oh, I didn't even realize I was eating the whole packet of cookies. So I also teach my clients to slow down and notice their sensations, using the five senses when they eat a food, so that they can realize they can actually really enjoy it, really be present with it, and also maybe realize that they thought they wanted the food, but actually it doesn't provide what they wanted from the food. And I've realized for myself that I used to crave cookies. I
Mm-hmm.
had those ideas about cookies. Any cookies, I was good. You could offer me any cookie, and I was just, oh yes, cookies. But I've realized that, of course, all cookies are not equal, and there are some cookies that taste better to me than others. And I've realized that there are some cookies that no, I can let go of because actually I don't enjoy them truly. Whereas there are some that I still really want, but if I'm having those cookies, then I really want to be present and really notice the sensations in my body. When I smell them, when I touch them, when I taste them, I want to be fully present with them. And then it's a different experience, and then it's really satisfying, contrary to what I was doing before.
Hmm. And am I correct in thinking that now you don't restrict yourself, but you're able to have something and enjoy it and then stop yourself?
Totally. That's what the so elusive for so long eat with in moderation.
Mm.
That's what I'm now exploring and enjoying. And when people were telling me, well, you can eat anything in moderation, I was so flabbergasted. I was so intrigued, and I didn't understand what that meant, because to me, eating certain type of food like chips, fries, things like that,
Mhm.
cake, that meant that I would eat it all. And I didn't have another way than this all or nothing way of dealing with food. But actually, exactly now that I'm not restricting at all, and I tell myself I can have anything I want so long as it feels good, so long as I feel good, that's completely changed the way I deal with food. And it's really not focusing on the food as much as focusing on me and how I'm feeling when I'm eating this. And
Mm,
that's completely different. And now I get it. Eating in moderation for me. And I can easily tell myself, well, yes, I really want to eat that cake. But right now I'm full. So maybe let's wait for 20 minutes. Let's wait for an hour if necessary, or as long as I need, so that then when I have the next bite, it's going to be really enjoyable, really pleasurable.
mm,
And then I can stop easily.
mm. And when you speak to your clients, is there something common that you find in the issues that they have as well, other than obviously food, but how they're coping or some sort of belief they have related to
Mm,
food?
totally, totally. Yes. And very often they experience stress. So they experience stress throughout the day, but they don't really know how to deal with the stress. So they wait for the day to get their reward, and this reward will be
Mm,
in the form of food. And I really see this as this like a rubber band, effect. They tighten the rubber band throughout the day with, okay, I'm feeling all sorts of things, the cravings for the food, the stress with my job, and I'm holding on, I'm really doing my best. But at the end of the day, the rubber band snaps because they can't take it anymore. And that's when they turn to food. It's very common, especially when at the end of the day, they're still dissatisfied with their day
mm,
and they still think, well, what I did wasn't right, or I still have so much more to do. And they actually have more stress. They create more stress because they want to add another layer of doing. They also have a huge to-do list when they get back home. So the food is actually very often a way to reward themselves from having a hard day, but
mm,
also another way to keep being stimulated, because very often they turn to candies, cookies, cakes that are high in sugar, so that they still have this rush of energy. The problem being, and they know that, the problem being that they won't experience this surge of energy for long. We know that after a while they're going to crash, and that's going to require more sugar, and they're going to work throughout the night, which means they're going to be tired the next day, and the cycle goes on with this tiredness, this still this desire to do more and to be more productive, more efficient. They're very ambitious people. They want to give their best to the world, but unfortunately, they deal with this the way I used to do, which can't last forever. It's not sustainable. It's not healthy. Mm.
And so, over your journey and your coaching, what would you say has been the most effective coping mechanism for stress and for satisfying your emotions? And what's your number one tip so far?
Yes, so good. So it's going to feel a bit abstract when I say it, but I'm going to explain later. But it's really basically to feel your emotions. I don't know about you, but in my family, in my culture, I was never taught to feel my emotions.
Mm,
And it was really implicitly taught that if I didn't have any emotion, if I never cried, if I never, if I was never angry, so much better. So that's what I learned. Also, lots of people are taught that if you feel sad, well, you can have a piece of chocolate and it's going to be magically solved. So that's something that I was taught, like so many of my clients, so many people I know too. So I learned how to feel my emotions instead of trying to solve for them, to fix them with food,
mm,
basically. But as we said earlier on, some other people turn to drinking, work, all sorts of behavior like this. But feeling my emotion is actually much simpler than I thought it would be. And it's basically describing what's happening to me when I feel angry, when I feel frustrated, when I feel sad. Even when I feel happy, it's the same thing, because it's just focusing on the body and what's going on in the body. We kind of know that already, but we don't do it on purpose, or we don't, very often, we don't even think. Even when we know that feeling our feelings is going to make us feel better, it's not the first thing that comes to your mind. So it's a process. And it's really, I like this analogy. It's like something that if you want to feel better, you have to do. You need to do. It's just like, um, you can't skip today, to go to tomorrow. You
Mm.
have to live through today. It's like this children's book, which is oh, what's it called? It's the going on a hunt bear on a bear hunt. Rather, it makes more sense.
Mhm.
You have to go through it,
Mm.
and it's exactly that. But it doesn't have to feel scary. I work with my clients on their thoughts about, on their fear about feeling their feelings, because when you have no idea what it looks like, it can be very frightening. I know I used to think that if I start feeling my feeling, then I'm going to, like be in quicksand. Sorry, I'm going to be drowning in my feelings and there's no way out. It's not true. It's quite the opposite. Once you feel your feelings, you feel better. And so it's basically describing to yourself what's happening in your body. So the first tip I give my clients is find where this emotion, for instance, of sadness or anger, where is it in your body? And it can be in several places. So focus on the main part. It can be in your chest, it can be in your belly, and then describe it to yourself again using your five senses. And so, what does it look like? If I could, if I were on the phone with my best friend, and she wanted to know what it looked like, what would I tell her? What about the shape, the color? What about the weight? Is there a temperature? Is it moving? Is it still? Is it the size of a coin? Is it the size of my fist? Is it the size of my stomach? Is it bigger than me? Things like that. How intense is it on a scale from zero? There's no emotion at all, to a 10? It's so big. Things like that, that helps us move away from the emotion, being in the emotion, but becoming the watcher, the one who observes the emotion. And that helps us actually not be in it, but look at it. So that's the first step. And I've been recently certified in heavening techniques, which not a lot of people know about, but it's basically using touch. And we know with infants, we know with babies that touch is super important between parents or caregivers and babies. Touch is really a communication means. But what I didn't know and what I've learned is that touch is also super important for grown-ups too. And we know there are techniques like emotional freedom technique, EFT or tapping, that uses the touch. So we already know that it's important, but we didn't really know how so. And what I like about having touch is that it can be as simple as rubbing your hand, which can be done anywhere you are. Yes, even walking on the street, you're not going to be, to have people look at you in a weird way when we do EFT and you just tap the top of your head. That can be weird for some people. But if you're just simply rubbing your hand, and you can do that when you wash your hands, that actually um, brings some hormones to the brain, neurotransmitters. And I'm not going to the brain to get into details because I'm not a scientist. I'm going to be bad at this, but it really releases things in the brain like GABA or relaxing delta waves.
Mhm.
The brain gets a lot when we're about to fall asleep, and that makes the brain feel safe. And then it's so much easier when you do this to access the emotion you're feeling and to describe it to yourself or to pretend to be describing it to your best friend. So because you feel much more comfortable. And once I've started applying this, it's much easier for me to feel any emotion I feel because my brain feels on board with it, when before it was so easy to just tell me, yes, okay, we can feel the emotion, but we could also turn to the chocolate.
Mhm.
And I've done this, little experiment with myself. What actually brings the most comfort? Is it rubbing my hands, having chocolate, or both?
Mm.
And just doing the havening techniques, it's topped my snacking. Uh,
Mhm.
I'm really, really happy for. So those are very simple things that anybody could try and see if it works for them too.
Can I share a personal experience?
Of course, of course. I'd
So,
love to.
so I struggle with anxiety, and I've had anxiety pretty much my whole life. And when my final exams were coming up for med school, I was very, very stressed. And I remember going to therapy for it. And my therapist told me that when you have a lot of anxious energy, try listening to some classical music
Mhm.
and take a piece of paper and just start scribbling. You don't have
Okay.
to say anything in particular. So I would just take paper and I would just scribble like this.
Yeah.
That's all I would do. I would do that for 10 minutes. And I'm not joking, at the end of it, all my anxiety, my anxious energy was gone, because it would actually come out of my body. It was all this tension, and it would have some sort of outlet for it.
Mm.
And I did that like maybe once or twice a day before my exams, and it made a huge difference to how I felt.
I love that. Oh, thank you so much for sharing. I love that because it's so simple and so effective. And
Yeah,
that's also what I like about coaching, about havening techniques, is that they're so simple. Anybody could do that. And it's so effective. And I love the doodling thing you were doing because actually havening techniques, so they use the touch, but they also use little brain games.
yeah,
And it could be exactly like that. Doodle for 1 minute,
yeah,
scribble or just count or recite the alphabet or find everything that's blue around you. But when you do that, you distract your brain, not this, you know, well-meaning way of just go for a walk, have a bath, etc. But in a real, it really changes the brain. You
mm,
know, the mixture, the combination of gentle touch and brain games.
yeah.
It's so effective. Oh, I love
Yeah.
that.
And I've noticed this, you can actually visually see it. So, for example, if I'm feeling that way, I take a piece of paper and scribble, and then maybe 3 hours later I'm feeling anxious, so I'll scribble again.
Mm-mm.
And then I might do that again. And if I actually put paper one, paper two, paper three beside each other, paper one is like congested with scribbling.
Oh.
Paper two will be like 60%, and paper three is just like a few scribbles here and there. And you can see that very clearly in front of you. So it really works.
Oh, I love that. I love that we've got tangible
Yeah.
evidence that it works. Yes, and
Yeah.
that's what I did with my, comparison with havening, snacking on chocolate, or both combined. I would before I did anything, I would notice the level of my stress, anxiety, or intensity of the desire for the chocolate, and I would notice that it was super high to begin with, and then after doing a little bit of havening techniques, a little bit of havening touch, it would go down. But over time, day after day after day, I noticed that the first number was so much lower to begin with, and over time it's just disappeared. And I no longer want to snack on chocolate. Genuinely, not forcing me, not using willpower as so many people do. You want this, but you won't, and it's just fascinating. I love that. Oh, thank you so much.
No worries.
Reading goes on my brain games list now. Amazing.
Mm. And what else would you say is something that you do now when you get these cravings, or you just it's been a long day, you're not feeling 100% satisfied. What else can you do?
Yes. Oh, I love that question. So the first thing I advise my clients to do is to write everything that's on their brain on a piece of paper. So no scribbling, but this time generally writing
Mm,
what they're experiencing. So whatever, it doesn't matter. There's no, it's not something that is going to be published. It's really just a brain dump and a thought download, I call it. And you can write it on a piece of paper, on a dedicated notebook, on your phone note app. You can also record yourself on a dictaphone. It doesn't matter. The thing is that when we do that, it shows you what you're actually thinking, all the thoughts about you, but also what you're feeling and about what you're feeling that, so the situation, the circumstances that trigger those thoughts and feelings. And then you can it shows you what you want to keep, but what also you might want to throw out, what's not really helping you. And it's really an awareness exercise because it's like turning the lights on in a messy dark room. Now you can move the furniture instead of tripping on it in the dark. And so it's like, you had a messy drawer full of cords and batteries and things like that, and then you decide what you put back in the drawer. And that's the very first exercise that I give my clients before we go deeper into coaching, because just they notice what's going on. And very often we think, well, there are so many things going on. But really, when you write it down on paper, it's basically over and over the same thing that you ruminate, that you spin on. And so seeing it on paper, it's so much easier to decide then, okay, here's what the issue is and I don't know what to do about, and here's what this I thought that was an issue, but really technically no, I can just drop it and that's it. So
mm,
that's something that can be very helpful too.
mm. Narrowing down basically to your root cause.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I love that. It's definitely the root cause because it's not going to be that the food is, calling your name. No, no, no. There's something deeper going on. And it's just that the automatic response that we've built by practicing it so often, for me, it was 30 years, it's going to be, yes, let's turn to the food. But really, that's
Mhm.
just the tip of the iceberg. And I love that, yes, we can get deeper by posing just for 5 minutes. You don't need more than this, even 1 minute or 5 sentences or 5 words. Just make it super easy so that you actually do it. And then you will find that, yes, it has nothing to do with the chocolate. It's just something, maybe the stress, maybe the anxiety you don't want to feel. And you're turning to the food just out of habit.
Mhm. 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 And is there any final tips that you'd like to share with our listeners today?
Yes. Well, one thing that I love, I learned that, and I love that I learned that, is that I used to beat myself up. As I said, I used to be not kind at all towards myself, very judgmental on the contrary. I thought it was useful. I thought feeling guilty, feeling regretful, beating myself up perpetually, using the stick, that was the right way to deal with whatever I had done.
Mm.
Because I thought, well, then I'm going to correct my mistakes. I'm going to course correct. I'm going to take the right course of action. But actually, it was producing the opposite. I was turning away from this self bullying again and again by turning to food because that was my coping mechanism. So when I learned to be kind to myself, that was a huge shift. And also when I learned to be curious instead of
Mhm.
furious, that was really good. Because when you're furious with yourself,
Mm.
you keep spinning the same story that you're a bad person for having done the bad thing, whatever. There's no room for improving anything. But when you become curious, then you open up possibilities, more opportunities. So I like to tell my clients, pretend you're a detective. They don't judge you as being bad. They're not the judge. That's not their role. They're just curious as to what happened here. What are the clues? And how can we understand what was going on really? Or you can be the scientist. Again, no judgment. They want to know more. They want to see what's working, see what's not. But also, you could have fun and pretend to be a baby. They're very curious. Or a kitten. I love kittens. I love cats. Or a puppy. They just want to explore the world. They have no preconceptions about any of it. So if you're curious, then you're going to understand and get better and better at whatever you're dealing with. So really, that could be something that could help, being curious, not furious.
Hmm. That's a really good tip. I really like that. And would you like to share your masterclass with our audience today?
Oh, yes. Thank you so much for mentioning it. Yes, because if you like this conversation and what I shared with you, then you're probably going to love my free masterclass, which is called Why You Binge at Night and How to Stop for Good. So you can sign up for it on my website, milobingefix.com. Milo is spelled Milo, bingefix.com. And this is also where you see the women I help, how I work, and what life looks like when you stop binge eating. And believe me, it's so much better than before.
Thank you so much, Nadège. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure. I loved your questions.
Thank you very much. Take care.
You too. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.